Okay, hello. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you so much for attending our Kuumba Kickback and this Creating with Kids panel. We know that creating can be an important tool for understanding yourself and the world around you, which is why we should encourage and cultivate that creativity and those interests in the young people among us. We're thinking about what it looks like to support the creative endeavors of the children in our lives, how we can be intentional about supporting the next generation of creators, and we're hoping that this is a conversation for anyone with children in their life that they love to be able to take something away from. So, not necessarily just for parents or teachers, but our panelists will be able to introduce themselves in just a moment and share a bit about the context in which they work and create with children. Um, and you'll start to see right from that moment the different ways we're thinking about this. So, I'm DJ. I'm a community programs manager at Black Girls Create. I use both she and they pronouns. I am a teacher. I'm not in the classroom currently, supporting teachers in other roles, but I'm a teacher and a parent. And very, very excited about our panel today. And so I think we can just popcorn. I'm going to go ahead and pass to Connie.
Hello, I'm Connie, pronouns she, her. I am the director of content strategy at Black Girls Create. That is the title. I I have a 14-year-old cousin who I'm very close to and have sort of, I guess, helped cultivate her creativity in her life. She's very creative, like hands-on kind of creative person. And we'll discuss later how I was like, oh, this kind of creation versus, like the kind of creation that I do versus the kinds of creation that she's into and sort of figuring that out. But also at my former job, I was a kid reporter mentor, to teach like young kids how to be better writers, which was not something I was thinking about consciously when I accepted to be on this panel, but also relevant experience. So we'll get into it.
Yes, I love it. I feel like that's what happens is you start being like, oh, this is relevant and this is relevant, and putting the pieces together. Courtney, do you want to go?
Sure. So my name is Kortnea. My pronouns are she, her. And I am actually not very creative, but I have been with my mom. We've been fostering kids since 2008. And so we've had kids come through, and it's gotten me to kind of access that side a little bit more as we encourage them to sort of express themselves, since there are things they can't quite verbalize yet. Being able to access that creative side of them helps them work through those things. So I have one with me here. She's 11, and she is, I think, the most creative out of the bunch we have right now. She's still figuring out the things she's into, but it's pretty fun to work with her and trying to, teach her art doesn't have to be perfect, and you can just do what feels right in the moment.
I love that. Since I'm directing already, I will go ahead. But for the rest of the panel, y'all can feel free to jump in without necessary direction. Dr. Crystal, do you want to go?
Sure. Thank you for having me, DJ. This is such a wonderful conversation that you've invited us all to. Kortnea, I, like you, would have said that I'm, not creative. I didn't think of myself as a creative person for a very, very long time. And I don't know the moment where it just kind of clicked for me, but it did. I lead a national organization. We produce live and immersive summer camp experiences for children ages 7 to 14. We've been doing this work for about 12 years. It was born out of a bookstore that I owned in Brooklyn, Brownstone Books. And, yes, thanks, Connie. The kids
New York.
that were our customers, they challenged me. We were reading a book series, and it was all about this mythological camp, and their imaginations push them to share with me that, what if a place like this does exist, and if it doesn't, why can't we make it? And that was the moment of challenge for me, and I hopped right in, and I'm just like, well, listen, as an educator, as a lover of books and all things literacy, if you as a young person ask me to manifest what is in your imagination to the best of my ability, I'm in. I'm going to do it. And so that's where we got started. So when and I did see the 11-year-old that was there with you. These kids are creative. They make the magic, and we just provide a platform for them to do it. So I look forward to talking more about how, but that is who I am. In addition to being a literacy scholar, my work is all about teaching kids that all stories matter, especially theirs. And I'll pass it to Ikera. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes, you are. Thank you. Hi, my name's Ikera. My pronouns are she, her. I have been working with kids since I was a kid, and it's funny to say, like, I think I'm probably the youngest person on this panel, so I feel like the kid in the room. But I've been working with kids my entire life. My godmom runs a daycare, and she started training me when I was probably like 7 or 8 to just be able to, like, how to change diapers, how to like work with babies, how to work with infants, how to work with like kids, I would say 6 months to like 5 before first grade, and just walking them to swimming, teaching them how to draw, teaching them how to read, like all of that. So that's like been ingrained in me. Aside from that, I am currently the artistic director of a youth group called Young Gifted and Black. And so I teach kids age ranged from, let's say, 2nd grade to 8th grade at the moment, but in the past it did go through high school. Teaching them Black history through poetry, rap, and song, and then they perform that, and then they become the teachers, and they teach other people this Black history through poetry, rap, and song. And that is just super tight, and it's super fun. And the kids, they say the craziest things, and you never expect, but it always just makes you think, and it always just makes you move, and it just, like, having that space for them is very important, and cultivating that space, because it's all Black children, and so they're all just like learning kind of their past, things that they would never be taught in school, mostly things that, like, Black History Month covers like 3 Black heroes, you know what I mean? And then we cover like the other 100 and whatever hundreds, and so building that space and working with those kids, that just, like, from there, like, students want to be rappers, students want to be poets, students want to become singers, students want to draw, and they want to show me their art. I have one kid who's obsessed with dinosaurs, so he's always talking to me about dinosaurs, and just, like, getting them, letting them just feel free to be whoever they want to be in that space and in that room. So, and then I also am the 3rd of 6 children. So I currently, my youngest brother is 6 months, and my other youngest brother is 2.5, and then my youngest sister is 9. So there's like a range of dealing with these babies and just trying to, like, in their different growing stages and learning stages, and just getting them to be creative. So I paint with my 9-year-old sister. I've recently started painting with my 2.5-year-old brother. And I enjoy painting. Like, painting is just something I enjoy doing, and they see me doing it all the time. She's like, Ikera, let's paint. Like, let's paint. I'm like, let's do it, and just letting them, like, creative vomit on the page or whatever. And it's just, like, it's really fun. So yeah, I'll pass it back to DJ.
Yeah, well, you and Crystal kind of started to get to this, but I guess my first question, the first thing I'm curious about is, what are the kids around you excited about? Like, what are they excited about creating, and how is that kind of tied to their other interests, if it is? I know some of them might still be figuring it out, but what are some of the trends and patterns you notice? What surprises you about that?
Well, my little brother is, like, obsessed right now with blocks and, like, building with his those big Legos. And I think it's interesting because as a kid, you don't really think about how creative a process that is, but then when you're watching a young kid do it, it's like, oh, you're just building, and you don't even know where it's going, and you don't even know kind of where it's going to take you. And so teaching him how to work with these 3D structures, and then he's trying to put blocks that don't fit on other blocks. So our running joke is, it's not gonna work. And like says it all the time. We're just like, it's not gonna work. And he just walks around, Kiwa, it's not gonna work. I'm like, no, it won't fit. And so that's like it's really nice seeing him. But then, like I said, with painting for me, like they just see my art. And so they don't, like, I was at his house with my little brother one time, and I was just in the backyard painting, and he comes outside in the backyard. He's just like watching me, and he like pulls up a chair, and he's like, I want to do this. You know what I mean? It's like trying to teach him how to do it, getting him in a little art smock so he doesn't ruin his clothes. But just like whatever he tells me he wants to do artistically, I'm just like, let's do it. Like, let's figure it out. And so that's really fun. And then Ami, she's super into pretty much everything, but she's like, Bayana did a real good job on that girl. If y'all know Bayana, she did her thing on that girl. That girl is Bayana 2.0. And she's just into, like how you were saying, Dr. Krista, like those mythological stuff. Like I'm pretty sure she participated in that camp this past summer. She was super into it. Like she just thinks it's cool. She loves dragons. She loves whatever, like all the stuff behind me. She's like, wow, this is tight. Like, so just letting her experience that. And then because there are so many Black authors and there's so many new stories that are like mythological and surrounding kids, letting her read those, letting her see those. I buy her like pre-drawn paint canvases so that she doesn't have to she can just focus on color first, step by step into the process. And then she gets a blank canvas and she's just like, I want to do something like you're doing. I'm like, do it. Let's go. So it's just nice being able to tap into different art forms with each of them and kind of meet them at their learning levels. And so, yeah, I feel like that for me right now is like what's been going on,
Right now I've got 3 kids. So we have Kimber, who's here. She's 11 and she is still kind of figuring it out, but she does like drawing. She likes painting. She is, had a small moment where she was kind of into anime. I'm having to sort of let go of some of the things that I thought were inspiring, like things that I think are inspiring. Like I like to read, for example, and she's not a big reader. And so I've been very more recently trying to kind of meet her where she is and say, well, do you want to try this? Do you want to try this? We've done some painting. We've done some, I buy her a lot of like craft kits. But one thing I have found is with the 3 kids individually, they like to do some different things, but like I can stop the bickering and like the fighting if we all sit down and do a creative project together. So sometimes like I'll buy everybody a canvas, or I bought everybody canvases and paintbrush markers. And I said, let's just paint these and do whatever we want. And so we had maybe 30 minutes of quiet and everyone was painting and I played music. And my niece, Justina, she's 4. So she wasn't really using the paintbrush markers, but she got her coloring books and her crayons and she sat down with us and we all just painted together and listened to the music and it was a good time. And Justina's really into drawing. This past Sunday, my family gets together every Sunday to eat and just, be with each other. So I saw her on Sunday and she drew this picture and she brought it over to me and she said, Kortnea, this is a bird. And I said, okay. And so I like your bird. I like the colors you use. And she walked me through like every line and every stroke and like each color she used had a purpose. And I was like, wow, that's a really incredible process. And she's like, wait, it's not done. And so she took the picture and she went back and she was, just drawing very careful lines. And then she said, okay, it's done now. And then she had me help her write her name on the back. And she said, okay, you can take this home and you can put it up in your room. And I said, okay, I will. So she's definitely got a lot of confidence. And with Kimber, she is, like I said, she's still figuring out what she wants to do and sort of trying to unlearn what she's been taught is good and just like do what feels right. But I got her a canvas once and she like covered it in paint and like used some glitter and it didn't look super intentional, but when she was finished, I was like, I really like that. So I actually took it to my office and I put it up. So like when everybody comes into my office, they see it. And I think that not necessarily unlocked something, but I think it helped her understand that like good art doesn't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a recognizable picture. It can just be something that you put yourself into in the moment, and you created it and you feel good about it and you're ready to put it out into the world, which is what I'm trying to get her to really absorb. And then my third kid, Zion, he is going to be 10 this weekend, actually. And he is very internal. And I think he actually has a lot of creative juices going up there, but getting him to open them up and express them is more of a challenge. So, you know, he might draw with me or draw with Justina, but if we're all together, he's a little more hesitant. So, we're still working on that. But I know one thing that Kimber and Zion have really gotten together on when they're not fighting is definitely drawing. So they'll spend an hour in each other's room on YouTube watching videos on how to draw like realistic human faces. And it's the only time they're quiet and not fighting each other. And, you know, I'll go up to the room just to check on them because it's so quiet. And they're just in there having fun, watching this YouTube video, trying to figure out how to draw. So, you know, at least in my family, this is creativity and creation, and art is like the one unifying factor where I know if we do an art project or a craft project, I can get everybody to come together and agree and follow instructions and make something and be excited about it.
That's amazing. I relate, Courtney, in the sense of what you said about like inspiring the kid in your life to be like you. So like I'm a reader, I'm a writer, an internal kind of kid. And my cousin is, you know, she's, I guess, 17 years younger than me. And I'm really close to her dad. Like we're just like a good trio whenever I go visit them. And I was, you know, I worked at a children's magazine, so I sent her books like in boxes. I would send her the magazines and the articles that I wrote, and I was like, "You're not reading these, are you?" And she's just like, And like I tried to get her to read Harry Potter because it's something I'm into, and she was just like, "I tried it for a school report, but I didn't finish it." And I was like, "Okay, right, where do we go from here?" But it took me a minute to realize that, like, yeah, she's not an internal thinking kid like that. She is more of a hands-on, wants to do stuff with her hands, literally. I think one of her earlier, like, hobbies, I guess you could say, was Legos. Like, she was really good at building Legos. Her dad would get her these, like, robot kits for Christmas. And she sort of passed that phase, but it's still related to just, like, me understanding that she can sit down and, like, build those Legos so fast into whatever the kit was supposed to be. And I was just like, wow. And now she's 14, she's in high school, and she's like into fashion, she's into dancing, she's in theater for, you know, she just joined the theater group at her school to be in the costume department. Like that's what she wants to do. Like she wants to be a fashion designer / model. And she has like one of those Cricut machines. Like her parents and her dad especially are very good at, like, you know, like leaning into that, like financially, you know, like that's the part about getting kids to be creative sometimes is how expensive a lot of these creative tools and creative programs can be. So, you know, they find deals and stuff and like know other people who, you know, we get their old Cricut or whatever so that she can play around with it and stuff. But the kind, like, she's really good at like piecing those things together. Like I've only watched her like do it a couple times, like from the computer process to printing it. And I'm just like, this is not something I would want to sit down and do. Like you have to like get the file, you have to put it on the program, you have to like edit it a certain way. And then when you print it out, it prints on a certain kind of paper. And then it's like, because it's sticky, so you can iron it onto clothes, you have to like peel it off properly and like know how to place it in the right place and then the transfer. And I'm just like, she does this like so fast and she is just like in it when she's in it. And I was just like, wow, that's like really fascinating. So she's into that. She's into dancing. She like can watch a music video and just like, you know, practice the steps a few times and just starts to get it. I'm just like, how do you do that? Like I I don't understand. And I consider myself to be a very creative person, but like the way that her brain works and my brain work are so different, but I think it works together in the sense that like I know how to like propel her in the right direction when she gets a little stuck. And like I do my best to encourage her. Like I started her little Instagram page for her little small business that she wants to start. Yesterday she told me that she was buying because she's been making jewelry as well. Like she like wire stuff, like clay, like again, like really hands-on. Like they didn't have an oven, like their oven broke like the day after Christmas. I was there. They didn't have an oven for 6 months, and she was devastated, not just because she couldn't like bake cakes, but because she couldn't like make clay. Like she had to get air dry clay. It's not the same as when you bake it in the oven. Like she was just so upset. So she's been making jewelry, and she like will wear it to school. And I think a couple girls at her school are like, oh, I like that. So she was calling me like, I have to figure out how much I'm going to charge them. And I was just like, well, don't forget. I was like, all right, don't forget. Like you have to consider, like how long it takes you to do it, how much it charges you to get the materials. Like, you know, and it's just like her little friends at school and stuff. But we've kind of been trying to get her into a process of like trying to also think like a business person. Not that I'm a business person. I'm not good at that kind of stuff either. But I think that's the thing that I can provide is like knowledge about how to find those kinds of things. Like her parents provide like the actual tools, but my cousin, she visited me earlier this year for like 6 weeks, and I was like, she's gonna be bored. I have to work. Like, what am I gonna do with this child like stuck in my apartment for this long? But I bought her. We went to the Japanese bookstore across the street from Bryant Park, and I got her this book that like. Because again, I'm like, if I can get a book about it, that's how I can express myself. But I got her this book that shows you how to like draw like the life forms and stuff for like fashion, you know, design and like outfits and stuff. And like she spent the rest of the time like in her little notebook, like planning her outfits. And now it's about to be Halloween, and she's, I guess, basically the creative director of their group. Of the group Halloween project, of the Halloween costume, because they're all going to be the fairies from the Tinkerbell series, and she's going to be Tinkerbell. She had to fight for that one. That one, I mean, we can maybe talk about that later, but it was a whole like unfortunate race thing for a second. Like they were going to make her the brown one, and she's like, I don't want to be the brown one. Like, what do I do? How do I express that to them? But then she's like, I'm going to be Tinkerbell. And they're like, what do we do about the like outfits? Like, how do we decide that? And her other friend was like, that's where Misa comes in. And I think she's going to make them wings because she's like learned how to make the wings from, you know, like a YouTube thing, like Courtney said. Like this kid can watch something and just like get it so fast. And that's crazy. And then finally, she also like likes to draw occasionally. And when Courtney was talking about, you know, like the things that kids give you, and it's just like, look, I made this, and you're like, oh, okay. Mises gave this to me for my birthday, and it's her in like a frog hat, and then me in a bunny hat because she likes frogs and I like bunnies. And this was her birthday card to me because like those are the things that we like. And you know, she thought it would be a really nice gift, and so I like fake laminated it because I was like, I never want to lose this. But yeah, she's very creative, as you can tell, and I do my best to encourage it and just like keep her thinking about the way she can like move it forward. So I get her the book so she knows how she's into fashion, but she doesn't know how to like design an outfit. Now she kind of is learning how to do that because I got her this book. She's got a small business that she's trying to run. I named it, and I helped her set up her Instagram page, and we're trying to figure out at some point how to get her on Etsy, like that kind of stuff. It's a handful, and she doesn't even live in the state. She lives in Florida. Like we don't even live together, but we talk every day. So yeah, that's my kid.
I love all these stories, and they remind me of every single kid that we've come across in, you know, the years we've been doing this programming. They are all creative. And regardless of how they want to create, we are all talking about the creative process and what makes it real for them, and what makes, you know, our sort of role in that process clearer. Connie, I love how you said, you see things through the lens of a book. And so that's your way into trying to, help bring out the creativity in her. The most surprising thing that I've learned over the years at my camps, they're literacy-based camps. And so, there's maybe a feeling or an assumption that kids that come love to read, and they don't all. They love the stories, they love to make stories, they love storytelling, but they don't all love to read. And it took me a while to kind of, step back and get out of my own kind of, position in understanding what I was doing, to say that they're not happy about the stories, they're happy about being with each other. And the stories are a way for them to be together and to experience something that is definitely developmental, but it's the community that's created around it. And I think each of you have talked about the community that you create around being creative with kids. Those moments of silence, those are moments of creation. Like we call it like flow and being in the zone. When we, look up at camp and everybody's engaged in something, they're in the zone. They're in the zone. And why it works is because we allow them to choose whatever they want to do. Pick your poison. If you want to, draw, if you want to read, if you want to debate, all of these kind of activities that surround the stories that are at the core of our camps. If you want to sword fight all day long, that is okay too, because it's a function of memory, right? For us, they're reenacting maybe battles that they've read about, or, stories that they've, made up themselves. And they're getting to decide the landscape, of it all, right? These stories are always put into an amazing context. The picture that you showed, you guys are both into something, and they become those instincts or those qualities become the story, right? That she's starting to tell about who you guys are in relationship to each other, but also, to yourself. So if I'm, the princess and someone else is the dragon, there's a setting that's happening around that. And kids are really easy and good at creating these worlds, right? Building these worlds that they can slot in. And I think our job is to recognize that there are things about the world that they live in that they're trying to work out through their imagination. And when we give them space and permission, and also like shine a light on the way that they are doing that. I'm so interested to hear about the, Tinkerbell situation right there. The world says that you're a brown girl, you can't be XYZ, right? Whether it's a certain type of girl or even someone that maybe is male identified, right? The world says that you can't be these things. And the kids push back in ways that are, super creative and very, very powerful. And so, to answer the question, why creativity? Creativity is what allows you to do that, right? Being able to get into your imagination and reimagine the world, right? Reshape the world that you're living in so that it works for you. That is what we do when we create. And I think we just have to, like, as educators or adults, be more generous, right? So that they can do this across any kind of platform that they choose.
I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on kind of what creating that space looks like. I'm looking at one of the comments in the chat here from China about someone they know whose parents used to use reading as a punishment, and so that person is like not very into it. Right? We can't force these things onto kids. We can't force our interest onto them, and it was really beautiful to hear you talk about the choice at camp, Dr. Crystal, and how they find a thing that they want to lean into. I wish that I could sword fight all day, personally. But in both our, sort of the children in our personal lives, and for those of you that work with children in other contexts, what does it look like to create a space that feels safe enough for them to use that imagination, to explore in different ways, and to sometimes do the scary things. Sometimes creating is scary. Sometimes it pushes you. So like, what can we as adults do to make sure that they have that support?
For me, it's asking a lot of questions, and generally not getting very many answers. You know, I juxtapose often the big kids with my niece because the big kids we both adopted from foster care, so they have things in their past that they need to work through on one hand, but also they have their foundational moments from when they were really young where they didn't have those safe spaces. So they have, I think, more to push through to get to that creative space. Whereas with my niece, I can ask her, you know, Justina, what are you going to draw today? And she can give me build a whole world for me. But for the two bigger ones, it's partly asking questions, but also sometimes it's just picking something and saying, this is what we're going to do. And so kind of creating that start for them. And then as they, you know, decide they're not good enough at it or they get frustrated, helping them kind of push through that frustration. And, you know, the other day, Kimber and I were sitting on the porch drawing on canvases with oil pastels. And, you know, she was like, well, this doesn't look good. And I said, no, actually, your color is really saturated. That looks good. You know, if you use your finger, you can blend it in. And she was like, well, it doesn't look like anything. And so I was like, well, you know, there's art called abstract art, and it doesn't have to look like something. You know, it makes you feel something. And then she said, well, she must have learned about this in school. She said, well, I want to be as good as Picasso. And I said, well, Picasso's paintings didn't look like anything either. You know, he created abstract art. And so a lot of times, you know, when he was creating art, people said his art wasn't good because it didn't look like something. And she was like, oh, So, you know, sometimes it's just deciding we're going to do a project. This is the project we're going to do, and sort of being open about what comes up during that time, and being willing to kind of educate, but also listen, because I've found that when we're doing those things and their hands are busy is when they're the most open, and they sometimes say things without saying things, and it you know, it helps kind of further them along.
For my program, we literally like everybody has to be able to read. That's like a blanket like requirement for Young, Gifted, and Black, because we're working with we're teaching them song lyrics, we're teaching them poems, we're teaching them raps. It's like everybody has to be able to read, but their reading levels vary because we have 7-year-olds and 13-year-olds. You know what I mean? So like what they understand, even if they can read the word out, exactly what they process is always different. So we have to like break things down. It's one of those things where we're not a reading program. Like we don't give them books. We don't give them like, it's really just about being creative. Like we are more likely to give them a coloring book for the first 30 minutes of rehearsal than we are to be like, here's this novel we want you to finish. Like we might give them a graphic novel, you know what I mean? So they can look at the pictures too, but we're not like forcing everybody to read, but it's like, you have to be able to read so that we can teach you the lyrics. That's just like blanket. So it's interesting though, because not every kid likes to read, like we've talked about. Not every kid even enjoys that. So when they come in for the first time, sometimes they're like, oh, like you got these papers up here, you know, I'm looking at this board. Like they're mad because they're like, I thought this was artistic. But then you start singing the song and they're like, oh, I'm rapping. Like I'm not just reading a book, I'm reading a rap. Or like, oh, I'm not just reading, like now we're singing. And like one of my colleagues will start banging on the walls, making a beat. And then they're like, oh, I'm a rapper. And they get really into, so it's like showing them kind of that it's like, it's not about the reading. You know what I mean? Like the reading is so important and they don't even realize that they're doing it. It's one of those things where it's like, they don't even understand that we're expanding their vocabulary. They don't understand that it's a part of our pedagogy. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that we're not doing it on purpose. Like we want y'all to be, you know, we want y'all to leave here better than y'all came. But it's like, they don't understand that that's also the work that we're doing, is that like, when you leave here, you'll be able to understand what a clarion call is. You know what I mean? You'll know who Huey P. Newton is and you'll know exactly, and you're not going to be like, who's that guy? I never heard of him. And it's like, nah, this guy's from your town. Like I'm in the Bay Area for those who don't know. So it's like a lot of the history that we do talk about, because I deal with kids does come, we talk about the Black Panther Party, you know what I mean? Because it directly impacts them. They see murals of them all the time. They hear about them all the time, but they don't actually know who they are. Like the schools don't actually break down what happened to them or what they were fighting for. They just kind of label them as this terrorist organization. But then you start realizing like they had the free breakfast program, they had healthcare, they had like real commandments, like what is it, the 10-point plan. Like they had real things that they wanted to get done, and those things align with what we're fighting for today. So then teaching them that, teaching them their history, they don't even realize that we're teaching them history. They're like, we're learning these tight songs, you know, when they hang out with their friends. But when it comes to the various like learning levels, I remember a couple of years ago, we had this kid and like we're rapping, you know, we're getting him in the songs, and he's like, we do it by rows. So like the shorties are always in the front because you can see, you know, so we can see everybody. And so we always call the front row the shorties. So he was on the shorty row and he was like, the words don't fit in my mouth. And it was one of the most like profound things I feel like my grandmother had ever heard, I'd ever heard. We were like, wow, like the words don't fit in my mouth. It's just an insane thing to say. Like nobody would ever thought of it. And you're like, no, they do, you know, practice. And we're teaching him how to break it down and stuff. But he was just like, after one rehearsal, I remember he went home mad, like the words don't fit in my mouth. That same kid a couple years later was on a Grammy nominated album performing and we're saying words that fit in his mouth. You know what I mean? And it's like, not because he couldn't do it, just because he hadn't been given the opportunity to do it yet. And so that's kind of what Young Gifted and Black does, and kind of how we roll is like, reading is important, you know, like you're going to have to get this like basic, you know, you got to get this vocabulary, you got to get these words, like you have to be able to sit down and read this thing. But that's not what we're here for, even though that is what we're here for. And it's like, we're not forcing you to do it. So I think kind of reframing it, like if you have an artistic kid, if you have a kid who's into music, like giving them a book about that breaks down like symphonies is not what they want, you know what I mean? But giving them a book that talks about all these like rappers, all these artists, all these like people that they actually enjoy, people that they listen to, that either explains their lives or gives them breaks down to the songs, like lyric books, like things like that, they'll be into it because they can hear it in their head and they don't actually think that they're reading. And it's not like I'm reading this thing to read this thing. It's like, no, I'm making music. And so that kind of thing, we kind of changed that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's using the word trick is funny, but you sort of like trick them into reading but that's the thing, you have to make it about the thing that they're into. And I think a great way to do it is for it to be something that, because a lot of kids who aren't readers are more external, more hands-on. And so I think if they can connect it to what they want to do physically, I think that's an easier in for them to read the book, because it's not about the reading, it's about what they get to do after that. Like it's about the process that, all right, like once I learn how to do this, like I get this over with, and then I'll actually know how to do this other thing that I want. So like I said, I gave Misa, that's my cousin, a book about how to draw fashion like lines and outfits and like different kinds of fabric and all that stuff. And I was like, I know you're not going to read a book about like, you know, a famous designer or whatever, but this book is like a book that shows you how to do stuff in another space, in another place. And I think that'll be the thing that, even if they don't finish reading it, like, I don't know if she still looks at it, but I think, you know, having it available is still like, okay, like I didn't read this book, but maybe I can find it somewhere else. So like you might go on YouTube, like, all right, like, but you know, this thing that you didn't know about before, and now you can go look it up somewhere else. And I think that's exactly what we want, you know, like for them to just like open up their mind, and reading does that. But sometimes you have to let it be just the stepping point and not like the whole shebang.
Yeah. We start with, and you know, it's similar to what everybody's saying. We start with an assumption of literacy, right? We're all literate. How we demonstrate it, where our strengths lie, that's where the fun starts. And so our 6-year-olds who, you know, maybe can't read words yet, they're amazing storytellers. That's literacy, right? Our sword fighters, they are reenacting a battle. They are telling that story with their bodies. That counts as literacy. They're the folks who traditionally like text, right? And so they're in there with the text. You're under the covers with the flashlight kind of kids, and they're textual. You know, what we do in our programs is say that that is all literacy. We are all sharing in this story. We are not creating a hierarchy of ability or even just kind of, cognitive development, because we are making this story together. We're understanding this story. We are sharing our knowledge with each other so that, I love the shorties. So if the shorties in our space are maybe the ones that don't, they haven't conquered textual reading yet, our job is to make sure that our whole team is up to speed, right? We're not going to win freeze tag if everybody in the group doesn't know that you cannot look at Medusa in the eye, right? So we're motivating this kind of understanding of the story, which is fun, and whichever ones you know, but you've got to make sure that everybody in what is for us a very play-based space knows the deal, right? If we set up a scenario where Anansi is the one that gives you the clue, well, you need to know that he's a trickster. And so the thing that he gives you is probably intended to fool you. Who knows that in the group, right? And who can simply say, no, 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 we don't listen to Anansi. He's the trickster god. And the kid might say, oh, maybe I've heard of that. Maybe I didn't. Perhaps my curiosity is piqued and someone can read me a story more about that particular folktale, or maybe not. I'm just going to run away from this dude that, and now I can see, oh, look at what he's wearing. Look at how, he's presenting himself in the space. Trickster, I got it, right? And to the point of like learning vocabulary and learning cultures and understanding that all of these characters exist across a variety of different stories. So it's that kind of deconstruction of stories and kind of remaking of it in ways that are collaborative and that celebrate all different types of learners, that we use as strategies to make sure that we can all get on the same page, right? Whether we're all reading the same or not, we are all aiming for being on the same page. And it is unfortunate, to the comment in the chat that schools teach us or treat reading like it's a individual act, right? Instead of a communal one. We talk about the griot, we talk about the fireside, we talk about storytelling. Literacy is a communal act. And when we teach it in ways that are not, we leave a lot of people and a lot of opportunity on the margins, right? And so that's one way to do it, bringing us together around the word, right? Around the fire, around the proverbial fire pit, or the actual, right? When we gather, I think someone earlier said our family gets together and we do this thing together. That's the communal aspect of it that people love. When we think of it as punishment, right? Like, oh, I don't know this, and so somehow I am not good enough, right? I think in that case, schools and even in our households, sometimes we're aiming at the wrong thing. When we think about and create pedagogy for our staff to follow, creativity is the top of the pyramid. It is actually the apex. The other things, they are foundational, so they're important. Like we said, we've got to be able to read, right? Everyone, in order to negotiate this world, you've got to be able to read the symbols that are a part of it. So we've got to do that work too. You have to understand and comprehend. So we've got to talk about, well, what does this word, mean? What does it mean in this context versus another context? These are all skills that we build. How do we understand and analyze what people say? I think our the rap genre is, one of the deepest and most impressive wells of storytelling, right? Because it combines the political, it's gendered in ways that allow you to understand and really critique things. It's visual, right? So I can see a good lyric. I can see everything that's going on right there. So we want kids to understand that they can also make these stories and create these stories. And what they do is they bring themselves to it, right? That's what makes you an author. Any book that we've ever read, that is one person's view of the world. And I don't think we do too good a job of teaching kids that that's what books are. I think there are these things that are inaccessible because we don't understand the way they're constructed, right? We make up those words. We make up the words. We make up the world. Um, a lot of the myths that we dealt with in the early stages of our camp were Greek mythology. And, you know, our kids are mostly white kids. And when kids of color came into that space, it was so evident that I had the opportunity to teach critical literacy, right? It is, I mean, talk about a place to teach criticism to really young kids. The idea that most monsters are women and most heroes are blonde hair and blue eyed. Well, come on, you just set it up for me easy. Why is that? Right? Why do we portray women as hysterical? You know, what are these notions of beauty that keep getting perpetuated? And let's face it, a 7-year-old's like, what are you talking about, Crystal? We don't use that language to talk about it, but don't think for 1 minute that they don't say, yeah, you know, that God turned her into a monster. Well, that wasn't fair. Or what was that actually all about? Right. And so, you know, when I talk about rap music being a great place for just kind of, you know, literary criticism, you know, mythologies are like that too, because they're patriarchal, right? Because they kind of set up these dynamics that reflect society. And, you know, to someone's earlier point, we don't talk like this to kids. We bake it into their experience, right? We're not going to necessarily, you know, teach the book that's presented in the way that a, you know, musical theory class would do it, or, you know, a college level African American studies class would do it. No, we bake it in. You know, we understand that an organization who disagrees with the government can be politicized in a way that's dangerous. So because we know that, we present it to kids in a way that they can understand it. And so I think it really is about, you know, deconstructing stories and putting them in the context of kids' everyday experiences and letting them put it all back together and give it to us in creative ways that show that they, you know, understand the worlds that they're in.
I just wanted to jump on because we've like hit around writers like Ikera's kids are in really writing, and you know, you mentioned Dr. Crystal about, you know, like this is how we teach storytelling, but a thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently is like this Western idea of like writing is a solo act, and that's actually not really true. And you know, even when you're talking about mythology and folk tales and stories that are passed down, that's not one person telling that story. Those stories have changed a myriad of times over the course of generations. And even in modern writing, like as a writer myself, I'm like, okay, well, I sit down and write the story, but that's not where the story ends. Like someone has to read it to help me edit it. Someone has to read it to be like, hey, this is what is wrong with it. You know, someone has to, like, it is an actual more of a communal process than I think like we think about in Western society. And you know, I think that can intimidate a lot of kids when it's like, oh, you go and just like go write that thing, and they don't know where to start and they don't know what to do with that. And then, you know, we don't really teach the, like, you know, we try to, I think there's like a mixed bag of like how we teach kids about how critique and grading, I guess, works. Like, you know, I had these kid reporters who would write an article, and then basically I have to rewrite it because, you know, we write it for the publication, but it's still an opportunity for them to get words on the page. And then, you know, what I did a lot, and I don't know that we all were doing the same thing, but I'm like, this is why I changed what I changed, because, you know, it's good for you to do this X, Y, and Z next time. So it's like, that is less grading. Like, this isn't wrong. This is just why I made it different and better. But that's a communal process. Like, that's me and a kid like going through this. And I think so much of Western culture, especially American culture, is, you know, one person, the chosen one, blah blah blah. But most of the things that we think are supposed to be solo can actually be done in a communal aspect, and then it would make it better. And I think, you know, it's important for us to sort of get that across to kids more.
Yeah, 100%. I think about there's a teacher. She's like a master teacher, or was. I don't even know if she's still with us, maybe. But anyway, her book. She's out of Oakland, I think, also. Christensen is the last name, Teaching for Joy and Justice. Write that down. It is such a great tool because it does kind of exactly what you described. It helps readers, and it's a primer, right? It's for educators, right? It's teaching kids, it's teaching adults how to teach kids. And the thing that it does is it says all of these voices that make up our experience, they are our writing club, right? What my mom says, what my grandma says, what I see happening, in my community. This is the data. And then I write it. And then, yes, I have a team of people that help me shape it, in ways that make sense. And what is like key to the way that she approaches this is you gotta start with the things that you know and care about. Doesn't mean that you can't have an imagination and write, and create worlds, but kids that write about what they are experiencing are so much more kind of like, verbal, and the output is so strong. It's why poetry is so powerful, right? The moment you kind of switch gears and say, yeah, don't write me a story, write me a poem. What comes back is amazing because all of these other technical pieces are no longer in the way. Now it's just, my story and the words to say it, right? And kids kind of lean into that space. And so it's a great tool. Like poetry is a great tool. And I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that the more we diversify the genres that we work with kids on and through, the better they become at the things that we know they might have to do eventually, the essay, the more journalistic pieces. But we've got to work with our genres and open that up for them in order to get them to where we want them to go. Sorry.
Yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
important when we're talking about, oh, I'm sorry, can I jump in real quick?
Yes,
I think it's
please do.
important when we're talking about creating with kids, it's important that we think about like the choice that they have, like their choice. Because I feel like when parents and when like administrators and people who are with kids all the time, they'd be like, oh, this is what we're gonna do. And it's like, kids don't want to do that. Like they have to. And so one thing about Young, Gifted, and Black is that like our basic flat, like Young, Gifted, and Black, the idea that we're gonna collect all the Black kids from the Bay and teach them Black history. I mean, imagine how many parents are like, hell yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going there, I'm dropping my child off. But then they drop their child off and their child does not want to be in the room and they're looking at me like, I'm looking at them and we just look like the meme, you know what I mean? And it's like, what are we doing here? But so with Young, Gifted, and Black, the main thing is like, we tell every single parent, your kid has to decide to be in this room, period. Like, you can't, no matter how much you want them to be here, it is not going to, it'll directly negatively impact the group if they do not want to be here. And like we talked about, it's all about the group. It's all about the community. So if one person is a little off, it's like, no. And I think when it comes to like, to the question that was posed in the chat, like the punishment over reading, it's like, that's somebody not listening to what the kid wants to do. That's somebody not listening to the kid's needs. That's somebody like just forcing it on them. And it's not, that's literally, that negatively impacts them through adulthood. And it just becomes this whole spiral of, I don't have choice. I don't have autonomy. Everybody else is. And it's like, no, you have to teach them autonomy young. And so that's like one of the biggest principles. And that's one of our biggest like driving points, is that like children have to be able to choose what they want to do. And if they are not choose, and then once they choose, then be able to reap the, get the effect. Like, you chose to be here. You know what I mean? Like, now that we are on the same page, you chose to be here. That means that I can expect a certain level of respect and attention from you. And you can expect that same from me, because we both chose this. And I think that that's just like, it's so important. And it makes such a difference. I've seen kids, I remember like a couple years ago having one of the students who I loved, I'm like, Brandon, like, what's going on? Like, when you're on, and when you're off, you are out of the room. You're out the window, child. You are no longer in Berkeley. Like, you are in Richmond and you are just in bed at home doing homework. But we're here, like, actively in the face. And he's just like, I don't want to be here all the time. Like, I just don't enjoy it all the time. And like, I have bad days at school and all these other things that are affecting me wanting to be here. And it's like, nobody's talking you through your day at school. You're just being forced to come to this program and then like forced to do this thing. So let me sit and talk with you about let's get through, and let me and you build our connection so that you can eventually want to be here. Or if you decide not to be, then we'll just collectively, me and you will have a conversation with your mother and let her know that this is not the program for you. No matter how much I want to work with you, no matter how much she wants me to work with you, if it's not for you, it's not for you. And I can't force that on you. I can't force this creative art form on you. And I just think having those conversations and really finding out what they want, that is just like the number one step in creating with kids, man. That's just like the basic 101, because if you're just showing them, forcing them to do things they don't want to do, it's just like, what are you doing here? Like, you're not actually cultivating this child. You're cultivating your own inner child. And that's past, baby. Like, let's focus on. So yeah, I just
Oh,
We're gonna stop with the hard truth there.
oh, that hurt. Oh, that hurt. I don't even know if I'm doing that, but that hurts. Like, you're not satisfying them. You're satisfying your own inner child. I felt that. I felt that. Wow. Wow.
Oh my goodness. It's a really good segue, though, for what was unfortunately our last question. I'm hoping we can sort of speed round it because we are up on the hour, and I really appreciate you all being here and the awesome conversation we've had so far. This final question is just about what has been, I guess, a work of art, whether that's book, movie, TV, something that has really like inspired or excited children in your life? Like, what has helped them get to that space that I've heard you all talk about, where like, I'm connected to something, I'm in community, I'm safe, I'm happy, I'm excited, I'm intrigued. What art are kids into? Some of the folks watching may want to like, find some of that to share with children in their own lives. Yeah.
I guess one thing of probably many is K-pop. My cousin is obsessed with K-pop. She rides and dies for BTS. And so like, that's the musical aspect of it. That's her fangirling. That's her fandom. But, the things that she doesn't like in terms of dance and fashion are also huge parts of K-pop culture. So it's not just the musicality of it and her loving this boy band. It is about like the fashion of K-pop artists, of the girl groups. Like, she'll look at their outfits and be like, oh, I'm inspired by this outfit that she's wearing and I want to mix it with this thing, and then that inspires her creative mind for new outfits based on the clothes she actually has or the things that she can order. The jewelry that they have, she'll look online to try to like mimic it, or like make her own necklace, or at least like style the necklaces like they were wearing in like a music video or something, or like on their tours and stuff. And like I said, she earlier, like another of her hobbies is dancing, and I think she's been doing it less, partially because the pandemic has sort of like made dance groups like hard to do these days. But like, that's the kind of music that she watches that have dancing in them, and so she's like doing the girl group dances that they do, and all sorts of stuff. So it's a lot of Korean culture actually that inspires her in a way that like isn't just about like the fandom of being a fan of Twice or Red Velvet or BTS or whoever.
For mine, I think, I'm sorry, do you want to go ahead?
Go ahead, Kortnea, go ahead.
Well, so for Zion, it's a lot of TV, but it's a lot of, he watches a good deal of anime, and he's gotten really into Beyblades, which is like, I know, a big thing, but I didn't realize how big it was. There are like multiple TV shows and like Netflix, and he's got a stadium and has like for his birthday last year, the only thing he could tell me he wanted was Beyblades. So everybody bought him Beyblades. So that's all he has. And, he can walk you through what each one does and how to do it. And he, is happy to share and, have you do a Beyblade, and he does a Beyblade. So I think that's one thing that he's really, really into. In one area where I try to lean in a little bit more to open up his openness for creativity. And for Kimber, I think a lot of it is TV. So, last summer I had like this whole series we did. So we watched She-Ra, Princesses of Power, and we watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, and we watched The Legend of Korra. And like to this day, she still talks about Avatar. And I bought her the like graphic novels. I need to buy her the next one, but I think that's where her desire to learn to draw and to get, you know, a little bit into anime came from. So she is, I think that's one area that she really likes. I know she's really into music, and she's always been into dancing as well. She danced before she could walk very well. And, you know, so she'll try out TikTok dances and dances she sees on YouTube, and she gets embarrassed when you want to watch her do it. But also a couple weeks ago, Justina, my niece, was over here and she choreographed a dance for her and Justina. And so they practiced it. And then they said they were ready to show us, and they showed us. And we were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And Kimber just came up with it on her own. So she's, you know, figuring out what she wants to do and how she wants to do it, and kind of experimenting with us. And we're just sort of trying to lean into it, you know?
Yeah, for me, because my group is we perform, so post performances, I like to show them videos of them performing. I think for kids who want to be on stage or who want to be like active and like want to, you know, be a performer and have that big personality, I think it's important for them to see themselves actually on that stage. And so when they're rehearsing, we try to set up a mirror so they can actually look at themselves and see themselves, but it doesn't always work out. But post-performance is definitely like showing them what they look like, because while you're in the moment is not always the same as when you look back on it. And it's not even on a like, you should have done better here kind of, it's not that kind of like, and this is where you were wrong. It's literally just like, look at y'all, like, you know, look at you in front of an audience, like look at you on stage, look at how your body's moving, pay attention to how when you take your breaths, pay attention to how, when you throw your fist up, and if you were late, just pay attention to it, just catch it, you know what I mean? But not like you were wrong or you need to workshop this part, you know, even more. But, and it's also good as far as like instructors, like knowing when, you know, when the group fell off as a whole, you know what I mean? Like when one person needs more extra help. But I think kids who are like really interested in performing, I think that's a really good tool, is that letting them see themselves while they're performing. It just makes you better. I used to perform, so I know, like, it just makes you better knowing that you are good. And if that's something that they're passionate about, it's just like, you know, just keep that in their brain. Yeah, just, you know, those videos for sure.
I would say that every kid we encounter is after a 360-degree experience. They want to read it, write it, draw a character from it, see how it connects to their full life. They refuse to be siloed. And so much of the ways that we experience the world and teach them force them into these silos. And they, you know, are amazing. This generation is just, it blows my mind, because they see the full connection, or the potential of the full connection, in just about everything that they are interested in. And so things that do that, I think graphic novels are amazing, right? It's a marriage of story and art, text and art, you know, and so they're not one-dimensional, right? They are multi-dimensional. Everything about the way that they are living their lives and experiencing technology makes them more and more so every day. And so whatever you're doing, think about the 3, 4, 5 other dimensions that thing can live on, and open that up for them. And those kids are like, now you got me.
Oh, such a good note to end on. Thank you so much again to everyone. Thank you for our audience joining. Remember that our panels are recorded, so if you miss something, you can come back in the future, and you'll be able to find all the panels on the Black Girls Create YouTube channel. Our next panel, Dreaming in the Dark Live, is happening in about 8 minutes. So you have some time to grab water, chat with folks in Discord, and see some things in the artist alley maybe. But thank you all so much, and we're gonna close this one out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, DJ.
Bye.